Desiree here. So I had some of my clients ask me to put a video about this up on the internet. So this is going to be a couple part series about ignorance is no defense. So J. Tom Morgan, he was the district attorney for DeKalb County here in Georgia, and it's a major metropolitan area. And he came up with this book called Ignorance is No Defense, because all these teenagers and young kids were coming in and they were like, hey, I didn't know that was against the law. And yeah, but guess what? Just because you didn't know doesn't mean that we aren't going to sentence you for this. So his whole idea behind the book was, to just let people know what the laws are, because we're expected to know what they are as Americans, but a lot of us don't. So here in Georgia, I like to, go over some of the stuff that he talked about in that book. And if you haven't got it for yourself or for one of your teenagers, I highly recommend that book. But this first part is going to be about marijuana. So in the state of Georgia, anything under an ounce, if you are possessing anything under an ounce of marijuana, it is considered a misdemeanor, which is punishable up to 1 year in confinement or jail. Anything above that measurement is going to be a felony, and it can be punishable up to more than a year in confinement, and that would be prison. There are a couple of caveats to that, though. It depends on what the containers are. So if you have all of the weed in one container, then that would be a misdemeanor. But if you have it separated out into smaller baggies or, other holding containers, that's going to be a felony with intent to distribute. So it's going to be possession with intent to distribute. And then it also, if you are possessing marijuana in any amount, it doesn't matter if it's less than an ounce or not, and you are within 1,000 feet of any school-owned property, it becomes a felony. So that would be schools, obviously, school zones. You can't have any marijuana on you. So if you get pulled over in a school zone and you have weed on you, it's a felony. So I would be careful about traveling around with weed. But we're not just talking about school zones. It says school-owned property. So that would be a school bus. So if you're within 1,000 feet of a school bus, that would even be private schools. That would be those maintenance buildings where they service the school buses, the Department of Education offices. Anywhere that is school-owned property is going to be subject to this law, and it's a felony. And this also has to do with the housing authority. So you can't possess any amount of marijuana within 1,000 feet of any housing authority property. So it's kind of hard to figure out what's owned by the housing authority and what isn't, but they could potentially charge you with a felony just because you got pulled over within 1,000 feet of a housing authority property. And then the last part that I wanted to address with you guys is simple possession. That's one thing. So if I were to have a blunt or a joint and I passed it to you and a police officer saw that, then your charge would be possession, but my charge would be possession and distribution, because I possessed it, then I distributed it to you. And then if you pass it back to me, then your charge becomes possession and possession with distribution. So it becomes a felony once you hand it to someone. It doesn't have to be in a bag. So just handing someone a joint because you're sharing it, or a blunt because you're sharing it, or the bong because you're sharing it, anything, that becomes distribution and it becomes a felony.